Olá pessoal, boa tarde. Bem-vindos a mais um Mock Class da EFIG. A EFIG, como vocês sabem, é uma agência de educação internacional que abre as portas das universidades, dos high schools, do mundo para todos vocês. Tá? Enquanto a gente está esperando ainda mais um pouquinho aí a galera chegar para vocês terem essa aula com o professor Michael, eu vou falar um pouquinho da EFIG. Galera, a EFIG, como eu estava dizendo, ela é uma agência de educação internacional que vai ajudar vocês aí a ingressar numa universidade, ou até mesmo num high school, ou até mesmo passar férias, fazer um summer camp em algum lugar do mundo. Tá? Então, nós temos um programa de aconselhamento. Então, você que está aí pensando em fazer universidade no exterior, você não é igual ao vestibular no Brasil, então você tem que se organizar. A EFIG, ela ajuda você a organizar tudo. Então, você vai ver aí com o professor Michael, ele vai falar no final, sobre aplicação nas universidades da Finlândia. Então, você vai ver que é muito importante vocês terem o seu portfólio. É muito importante vocês saberem como escrever uma carta de como ingressar na universidade. Você tem que se vender para a universidade para ela te admitir. Não é um vestibular. Então, você vai ter isso na EFIG. Você também vai ter orientações do TOEFL e do IELTS. Orientações de carreira. Não é aquele teste vocacional que fala, você é médico, você nasceu para ser... Aqueles BuzzFeed, eu acho que é isso, no Facebook, né? Eu acho que vocês têm muito, a gente tem muito isso no Facebook, BuzzFeed. Então, o teste vocacional não é só isso. A gente vai ajudar vocês a se encontrar como pessoa, como profissional, para vocês irem para o destino aí que vocês escolherem. Então, se vocês quiserem saber mais sobre o programa de aconselhamento, os outros programas da EFIG, High School no exterior, ou qualquer outro curso no exterior, ou até mesmo um Summer Camp, por favor, entre em contato com a gente. Eu vou deixar meu e-mail e o telefone para vocês entrarem em contato. Tá legal? Hoje, então, galera, a gente vai ter aí a aula com o professor Michael Child. Ele é um professor de uma universidade da Finlândia, Lappeenranta University. Ele vai falar um pouquinho não, né? Ele vai dar uma aula muito bacana sobre energia sustentável. Algumas dicas. Microfone desligado, mas a qualquer momento, abram o microfone de vocês e conversem com o professor. O professor está aqui para interagir com vocês. Então, vocês têm o passe livre para abrir o microfone e conversar com o professor. Mas tenho vergonha, não tem problema. Digita no chat que eu vou ler e aí eu pergunto para o professor. Mas vamos perder essa oportunidade de trocar ideia com um professor de uma universidade da Finlândia sobre energia sustentável. Então, vamos tirar todas as nossas dúvidas, vamos interagir. Quem sabe essa área de engenharia de energia, essa área não é a área que você está pensando ou que você nunca pensou e depois dessa aula vai mudar de ideia. Então, vamos interagir bastante, tá bom, galera? Eu vou agora apresentar o professor e vamos começar essa aula, tá legal? Hi, Professor. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you. I was just telling the students to enjoy this amazing opportunity with you, with everyone here, and then they can open the microphone and talk to you. Don't worry, guys. Don't be shy. English is not my first language. Professor Michael is Canadian, so it is his first language, but everyone here is Brazilian, speaks Portuguese first language, and English is a second language. So don't worry, don't be shy, and let's practice that, okay? Thank you very much, Professor, and then you can start your magic.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I speak some other languages as well, both Finnish and French, and a few words in some others. So I know what it's like to speak in another language, and I'll just repeat the message that Diego mentioned, that there's no need to be shy. We're all friends here. Okay, I'll just share my screen so that you can see that I come from Lappeenranta University of Technology. My name is Michael Child, and I'm a researcher and also head of international bachelor's programs for the School of Energy Systems at Lund University, which is what we are going by these days. My main research area is in electrical engineering, but I consider myself more of an energy systems engineer. I only know one real joke about electrical engineers, and I think it has a little bit of relevance at this point. One day, 3 people decide to go out for a beer. One is an optimist, one is a pessimist, and one is an electrical engineer. And they go to one of these fancy new bars that pours their beer, pours, 4 centiliters of beer, or 4 deciliters of beer, sorry, in 8 deciliter glasses. And the optimist, of course, is very happy and says, wow, look, the glass is half full. The pessimist, of course, is very upset and says, oh, look, the glass is half empty. But the electrical engineer stares at the glass a little bit longer than the others and finally comes to the conclusion that the glass is too big. So I think this tells us a couple of relevant things about electrical engineers. The first is that our jokes are not very funny. And the second is that electrical engineers are very concerned with the infrastructure. So we're more concerned with the glass than we are its contents. We're more concerned with the inner workings of a laptop computer than we are actually using it. We're concerned with, while most people are concerned with just getting electricity from a socket in the wall, electrical engineers are envisioning the wires behind that wall and the fuse boxes, and going beyond that to the transmission and distribution lines that are on our streets, and beyond that to the power plants that make that electricity. So I think this is relevant when we look at future energy systems, because I think we all know that as we move towards more sustainable energy systems, they will be different and the infrastructure will be different. If we spend too much money making that infrastructure too big, then we may run a danger of wasting money. If that infrastructure is not big enough, we have the possibility that we won't be able to provide energy to people where they need it and when they need it. So this is why we need to start looking at what future energy systems might look like, so that we can sort of also envision the potential impacts that it has on the energy infrastructure that we have all around us. So we're going to look today at one particular type of scenario for the future, and that is one of 100% renewable energy. But I think we need to start first looking at what is the backbone of the current energy system. I think we all know that they are based on fossil fuels, primarily. Of course, there are exceptional countries like Brazil or Norway that have an abundant amount of renewable resources that are used in the energy system, but most countries rely primarily on fossil fuels. They have been the foundation of global energy systems. They are storable fuels that provide almost all the flexibility that we need to meet very variable demands for energy services. Therefore, if we're going to get rid of these fossil fuels, it means finding flexibility in other parts of the energy system. And this is no easy task. However, the rewards for doing this include being able to reduce carbon emissions, mitigate climate change, reduce health problems, improve trade balances, and increase energy equality among the nations of the world. So how do we accomplish this? The first question I'm going to ask you, and I hope that someone will, or I hope many people will give me answers, is what sort of fuels or energy resources are out there that we can use to replace fossil fuels? So we're going to get rid of the fossil fuels entirely. What can we replace them with?
Vamos lá, vamos interagir com o professor. Ele fez uma pergunta, podem abrir o microfone, senão vocês podem digitar no chat ali que a gente vai lendo, tá bom?
Electric energy?
Yes, where can we get that electricity?
Maybe from the water?
Oh, yeah, okay, I didn't hear the first part. You must have said hydroelectric electricity. Yes, absolutely. And that's going to eventually show up on the screen as we redesign the system that we have here. Any other possibilities?
Professor, we do have here, Mariangela said wind, and Camila Maury said sun.
Great, yes. But is there any fuel out there that we can use in the current energy system? Because some of these things are more new sources of energy. Is there any fuel out there that we can use to replace fossil fuels and not change the kinds of power plants and other conversion technologies that we use? So the fossil fuel we use for the combustion engines that drive our cars tends to be oil or liquid fuels. In our power plants, we use solid fuels like coal. And in heating units, we use gas fuels like natural gas. Is there any other wonder fuel out there that we can use that can do all three of those things?
Professor Isadora Iga, she said geothermal.
Yes, geothermal can give us heat. It can also give us electricity, but we can't really use it as a liquid fuel in our car. The sort of one that I'm sure you're all aware of there in Brazil
Alcohol?
is, yes, alcohol, but where will we get that alcohol from?
Maybe sugar cane. I don't know, like this that say.
Yes, yeah, sugarcane or other crop residues that have high amounts of sugar, and in general we can call this biomass. So let's make that first change in our system. We can use biomass-based fuels for all of these things, and we don't need to really change the system very much, because biomass can be converted to liquid fuels to replace oil, solid fuels to replace coal, and gaseous fuels that can replace natural gas. In many of these cases, conversion technologies like power plants in cars don't need to be changed at all. However, there are two main problems associated with the extensive use of biomass. The first is that we can't store biomass the same way that we can store the fossil fuels. They will not, we can't really store them for long periods of time without them either getting rotten or somehow becoming lower in quality. And second, and I think this is the most important thing, there's simply not enough biomass in the world that can be used sustainably to cover all of our energy demand. And we'll see a little picture of that a little bit later. So we definitely have to look at some of these other options that you mentioned so that we can reduce the pressure on biomass. But what are all of these other options? And this is what I hope to do, to kind of go through them step by step. So I think the first option that we need to look at is not with the energy resources or the conversion technologies, but we really need to look at the demands for energy that we have. We need to change how we demand energy services. We need to reduce the amount of energy we use. We need to be more efficient with our demands. And important in the future, and very important to your lives in the future, will be to add more flexibility of our demands. So now I'm going to ask you another series of questions that I hope you'll answer. So what are some of the ways, first of all, that we can reduce the amount of energy that we use, either for mobility or transport, for our electricity demands or our heat demands. How can we reduce the amount of energy we use?
AV, can you just open your microphone and say your name? Sorry, AV?
She's my sister, Assunta Viola.
Assunta. My name is Assunta Viola.
Okay, Assunta. So what you said on the chat box?
I said using the natural resources like sunlight.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. We don't really give the sun enough credit. Usually we measure the amount of energy that we use as something called primary energy. And if we were to account all of the ways that we use sunlight to light our lives or to heat us, I think we would see that it's the most important energy resource that we use already. We just don't always account it. We tend to look at the fuels we use in the wintertime when we're cold, but we don't give the sun proper credit in the summertime when we don't need those fuels. But something is providing us with this energy. We can build our homes in such a way to utilize natural light and the heat from the sun more effectively. And this will reduce our need for energy. We can also decide, looking at mobility demands, for example, we can decide to walk or ride a bike instead of taking a car. We can utilize
community transport.
Yes, absolutely. That was exactly what I was going to say. So I know I'm a big fan of using public transport and do so almost on a daily basis. Perhaps not so much in the summer when I can walk or ride a bike, but absolutely. All right, now let's look at the second keyword, efficient. How can we be more efficient with energy? What ways, what are some of the ways that you have become more energy efficient in the past?
Anyone, guys? Assunta said electric engineer, energy, sorry.
Yes, and that will be especially dominant in the future. We will see the electrification of many energy services that were formerly provided by other energy resources. I think that the biggest one, and we'll definitely get to that, is electric vehicles. When you compare the energy efficiency of an electric car, I own myself a Nissan Leaf, you see that they are 3 to 5 times more energy efficient when we look at the amount of energy per kilometer than traditional cars. Likewise, with that efficiency gain, we can save a lot of money. And yes, the cost of fully electric cars up front is a little bit more, but those costs are coming down. And we also get paid back by, and I'm really happy that I haven't had to put gasoline in my car since last November when we got the car. So I think that each week I'm saving quite a lot of money at the same time as being more energy efficient. All right, the next one has to do with flexible demands. So there's lots of things that we do that need energy that we have to do at very specific times of the day or certain days of the week. You know, we have breakfast at a certain range of times, or other meals at certain times. It gets dark at nighttime, so we need to turn lights on, you know, in those evening hours. So there are some of our demands that are very rigid. We can't really change them. But there's a whole bunch of demands that are much more flexible. If we consider something like when we wash our clothes, we use these machines at particular times that are convenient to us. But what if we could be more flexible? Wash our clothes at times when electricity is more plentiful, like when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing in the future. Are there any other types of activities that you can think of that you can that need energy, but that you can be more flexible with in terms of when you use that energy?
Professor, the energy for lighting?
Yes, generally we'll need that lighting when it's dark, and to some extent we can't really change that, but we can change our behavior by turning lights off that aren't needed, especially at times when we know lots of other people are going to be demanding electricity. Yes, can we get one more example of how we can be flexible with our demands for electricity or heat or mobility?
If your shower is like from solar heating, you can take a shower in an hour that is more like hot.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the key, that we start to realize that more of our energy intensive activities can be timed in a smart way. We do this, you know, for a lot of activities in our lives. We choose clothing that is appropriate for the conditions outside. We choose to do certain activities or not do them because of the weather. We're just going to be expanding that into many more activities that use energy. And we'll do certain activities when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, or it's raining, so we know that there is hydroelectricity around. And then we can avoid or put off some activities for other times. We've gotten very used to getting what we want when we want it in terms of energy services. But I think as we move towards more variable renewable energy, like from the sun and wind, we just need to think about how we ourselves, how our demands can be more flexible. All right, and again, I don't think that really gets enough attention. We focus more on energy resources, but I think this will be a very big topic for the future. All right, so now let's sort of look at some of the conversion technologies, specifically the power plants and individual heaters. Power plants are generally what are called condensing power plants. They make electricity. We put a fuel in, we make hot water, it's turned to steam. That steam drives a turbine that makes electricity. But what happens to that steam after it goes through the turbine? Well, for the most part, it just gets condensed or cooled in a cooling tower and goes off harmlessly to the atmosphere. And the energy efficiency of condensing power plants are roughly 30 to 38% energy efficient. But here in the Nordic countries, we utilize something called combined heat and power plants. All right, so we make electricity at roughly 40% efficiency because of the type of plant that we use. And at the same time, we make heat. We utilize this heat in district heating systems that heat our homes and businesses and shopping malls and hospitals and so on at about 50% efficiency. So the combined energy efficiency of a combined heat and power plant is about 90%, far more than just the individual plants that we had before. And this will ease some of the pressure that we have on the biomass resource. Another good thing about district heating systems is that we can utilize a whole bunch of different types of heat. We've already, or first I'll talk about one thing that district heating systems commonly have is some kind of storage. So, and this type of storage tends to be very cheap. We can make significant amounts of storage in caves, underground pits, in tanks, and so on. And again, it adds some aspect of flexibility. We can even be flexible over a longer term, such as a seasonal scale. So we can make heat in the summertime when it's hot, and even save it until the wintertime when the temperatures are colder. And then we can sort of look at other forms of heat that would fit naturally into a district heating network. This includes solar heat that we've already talked about. It can be used in a district heating network, or it can be used in an individual home for hot water, but also waste heat from a number of industries that use steam or hot water in their processes. So this waste heat can easily be recovered and used in the district heating system. All right, so we have a new element here to the system, but we need to add more. I asked you earlier about what other types of energy resources do we have access to, and I'll just show you a simple graphic of what they all are. So as you can see, the solar resource is the biggest one that we have here. You notice these brown little balls here on the left-hand side. The world energy consumption was about 16 terawatt years in 2009. It's a little bit more now, 17, 18, something like that. And by 2050, it's expected to be 28 terawatt years. And on the right-hand side, you can see the amount of finite fossil fuel and nuclear resources that we have available. Keep in mind that those are absolute amounts. Once those are gone, they will not come back. But the renewable resources we have, these are the amounts that we can get each year. And you can see that the solar resource is far greater than anything that we will ever need. The wind resource is also quite significant, biomass. And then we have hydropower, of course, geothermal was also mentioned. And then we have different forms of ocean energy. There's wave energy here. OTEC is ocean thermal energy conversion. Anytime we have a difference between hot and cold currents, which happens in many places in the oceans, we can create a difference in voltage. Likewise, there's something called salinity gradient ocean energy, where if we have a difference in the amount of salt in the water in 2 points, we can create a voltage and again get some electricity from that. And of course, tidal energy as well. So these are the primary resources that we will need to harness for the future. As you can see, the total use of biomass as a resource is less than half of the current demand for energy, and it's expected to only be about 20% of total energy consumption in the world in 2050 at best. So we need to go back and we need to look at other energy resources that we can use so that we don't cut all of our forests down and only use biomass sustainably. So we need to use a wider range of sustainable and renewable fuels. And we've mentioned some of these already. You can add sugarcane to this. You can add, other crop residues. All of these are sort of biomass, but we we can sort of think of it a little bit differently. And we can also start to think about other sources of electricity, which have also been mentioned as well. I've already mentioned that thermal storage can offer some kind of flexibility, even up to a seasonal time scale. And we have seen how combined heat and power plants and district heating can sort of bring together the electricity and heat sectors. Because in the sort of traditional energy system, these sectors, mobility, electricity, and heat, tend to be, we tend to look at them in isolation, but now we can look at them in an integrated way. Further integration can come from heat pumps. Instead of, sorry, I'm one slide behind. Instead of using just individual heaters, we can start to use heat pumps and other sources of waste heat, such as geothermal heat, solar heat, and waste heat already. In my own home, I have a geothermal heat pump that basically converts 1 unit of electricity into up to 5 or 6 units of heat, depending on the outside temperature. And again, this is another way that I've been able to be much more efficient in my demands for energy. I still get the same amount of heat, but the overall primary energy I'm using is much lower. And as mentioned, we can also get power and energy storage from hydropower or hydroelectric power, power plants, sorry. And again, this amount of storage depends on the type of river or water system that we will find the hydropower plant. Some of the rivers here in Finland, for example, are quite small, and so the amount of storage behind the dam is very limited. But I'm sure in Brazil there are much larger hydroelectric projects that can offer much more flexibility to the energy system. All right, well, what happens when, you know, the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow and we don't get enough power from hydro and our renewable resources or renewable fuels such as biomass are used to their maximum? Well, luckily, we can, you know, borrow from our neighbors if they have any. And at times when we have extra energy, perhaps we can sell that to our neighbors as well. So wisely using import and export is yet another aspect of flexibility that we already use in our energy system, and we can use even more in the future. We can also expand different types of storage as well. And one thing that we now can start to see is that when we have such a thing as an excess of renewable electricity, we have almost a direct, or when we have excess renewable fuels and so on, we have access to storage and other aspects of flexibility that will help us in the future. So here's another form of energy sector integration. When we have, for example, excess renewable electricity from the sun or wind, we can use that in a heat pump to create heat, or use it in a direct electric heater, which a lot of people have in their homes as well. So we're going from power or electricity to heat. And by having heat pumps and electric heaters in the district heating system, we have access to this very large potential thermal storage in the system. Again, that can be used on a seasonal level. So we can actually take the sunshine from the summertime and turn it into heat for the wintertime. So now we have an improved energy system at least, and we're taking a lot of the pressure off of our biomass resources by adding some other resources. And we're being a little bit more efficient and flexible with conversion and storage, and also with our demands. But we still have a lot of work to do. And in particular, we haven't really talked yet at all about the transport sector. Our demands for mobility have traditionally been supplied by oil-based products, particularly gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. Certainly other fuels have been used, but these fossil fuels represent the vast majority. I know that in Brazil, biofuels and biofuel blends and so on are very common. And I think the world is learning a lot about from Brazil about how to use bio-based fuels. But an important aspect of mobility in the future, I'm sure you're aware of, will be electric cars. Electric vehicles are more than 3 times more fuel efficient than vehicles that use combustion engines. And this again results in decreased pressure on energy resources. And what's more, the batteries of electric vehicles offer a significant storage opportunity for the energy system, or increased flexibility in the system. All right, so when we look at the average size of a battery of an electric car, mine is 40 kilowatt hours. What does that mean? Well, that represents about 5 days of electricity that I would use in my house on average. Okay, maybe it's only 1 or 2 days of wintertime consumption of electricity, but the point is that it's a very large amount of electricity. These batteries are very big. And now we have direct access from renewable electricity to another form of storage. It's not going to be the only form of storage that we use, but it's another one that we can use to add flexibility to the system. My own research is showing me that if we smartly charge our cars at times when electricity is available and avoid charging, that doesn't mean not charge, avoid charging our cars when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. That can be very good for us as individuals because we can take advantage of lower prices in general. And it can also be very good for the system. Anytime we can be more flexible with our demands, the infrastructure that we need to support the energy system can be a little bit lower. If we continue to get what we want when we want it, we have to pay for more infrastructure. And we can avoid doing that. So not only will these batteries be able to store a great deal of electricity at times when it is plentiful, it will also be possible to transfer the energy stored in such batteries back to the grid or to our own homes at times when the demand for electricity is greater than the supply. Now, I think it will take some time before we as a global society will get used to charging our own cars and then giving the electricity back to the electricity grid. I think it'll be some time before we feel comfortable doing that. We'll need some motivation to do that. We'll need to make some money from it. But my research at least is showing that this can also offer more flexibility to the system. We won't all be in a position to do this, but some of us will. And there may be, again, some money that we can make along the way.
Professor, before you go further, I remember when I was a young boy, I just watched a movie from Robin Williams, and it was pretty funny because he got a car that he filled, he used as like plants or like a water and a mixture with plants in this car. And it was kind of funny because pretty much all those students, they don't know about the Back to the Future and movie and how 2019 was in the movie and it was last year. And then I was thinking right now when you're talking about that. So do you think, like, for example, a mixture between with water and any kind of plants can use as a fuel to drive it, to make a car drive or not?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's already been done here in Finland. You know, people used to burn wood and create steam that would drive their cars. Um, I think that there are lots of possibilities. The question is, will they be efficient enough? And the question is, will they be competitive economically with the other options? Yeah. I think the electric vehicles that we're seeing on the roads today will be much more competitive than any other option in the future. And we as a people, we go for the technology that, you know, satisfies our needs at the lowest price. Of course, we're making more sustainable choices and not just thinking about price. But the dominant technologies tend to be the ones that are the least cost solutions.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's lots of ways that I think we can envision this whole vehicle to grid type of concept. Here in Finland, they talk about, you know, vehicle to summer cottage applications. And it's just kind of a joke now, but I can almost see that things can happen this way. Now imagine you have a much larger battery in your car. So Tesla cars, you can get batteries that are 100 kilowatt hours. That would power my house for a couple of weeks. So let's say you have a summer cottage that doesn't have any electricity, and you drive your car there. Let's say you drive your car an hour, and then you plug your car into your cottage. And the power you use in the cottage for your lights, for your refrigerator or television, whatever you want, will come from your car. And let's say over the course of a weekend, you use about 20 kilowatt hours of electricity. Well, you still have enough left over in your car to drive back home and then charge it again. And this may seem like a bit of a joke scenario, but it's at least technically possible for this to happen. And I think we humans are very creative, and we will find ways to utilize the flexibility that we have right in front of us. And our cars will represent a lot of energy flexibility. We just need to think outside of the current box that we're in. All right, of course, some aspects of transport may be difficult or even impossible to electrify. So other fuels need to be considered. In particular, air travel, large truck transport, international shipping will require the use of more traditional fuels that can be stored in onboard reserve tanks. The same may be true for the mobility demands of global military or emergency services. You know, I don't think we're at the point yet that we're ready to cross the Atlantic Ocean in an electric airplane. Maybe we can make some short flights, say 1 to 2 hours long, but you know, I think we're going to need a lot of the traditional liquid fuels. And the good thing is, well, we know already that we can make some of these fuels from biomass, but we can also produce them synthetically. And this is something that we're doing at Lund University as well. We are making synthetic fuels from some basic building blocks, from air, which contains carbon dioxide, from water, which we can take hydrogen from, and from excess renewable electricity. And with these three main building blocks, we can make any kind of hydrocarbon that you want, and certainly all of the hydrocarbons that we can use in automobiles and for other applications, as we'll see soon. At the moment, it is expensive to do that, but again, the costs are coming down as we build up this technology. And by the way, this is not at all old technology or in new technology. The chemistry based on this synthetic fuel production is more than 100 years old. And so we are very good at doing this. What we haven't been so good at the moment is bringing the cost of this kind of production down. But once we do, and I believe that we're heading in that direction very quickly, we can use these synthetic fuels exactly the same way that we have been using the traditional oil products in the past. And we can store them for long periods of time in exactly the same kinds of storage facilities that we are currently using. So there's a lot of aspects of the energy infrastructure that are already in place. We've already paid for them. Right. So in addition to such things as making power, turning power into gas or power into liquid fuels, we can make a number of other types of products as side products. So all we need is carbon dioxide, we need some water, and we need some renewable electricity. And then we can make a whole bunch of different products. And some of these can even satisfy some of our chemical demands. We can make hydrocarbons that can be used to make paint, to make other products, waxes, and naphtha, which is used as a heating fuel. Sometimes it's used in aviation, and other types of chemical products that we need in everyday life. We can use the nitrogen from the atmosphere and make ammonia, which can be the basic building block of a lot of fertilizers that we need in agriculture and so on. So this is another big concept at university at this time, power to X. What is X? Well, X can be any product that we think that we can make from these basic building blocks of renewable electricity, water, and air. And you can read a lot more about that from the Lute University web pages. What else can we do with this power? Well, we can make water to satisfy growing global demands for fresh water to drink and to use in our agricultural fields as well. We can take salt water from the oceans, which is rather plentiful, and with a little bit of electricity and sometimes heat, through a process called seawater reverse osmosis, we can turn salt water into fresh water that is suitable for drinking, cleaning, and agricultural purposes. So this desalination represents yet another flexible demand for electricity, and we can satisfy these water demands and store water at times when, again, renewable electricity is plentiful. And that will happen a lot of the time. The sun likes to shine and the wind likes to blow. So we will have the opportunity to do this. One final element that I want to talk about is electricity storage, because so far we've only really talked about the vehicle batteries, but there are many other forms of electricity storage that are being used currently and that will be used in the future. So one of the most common forms of electricity storage that we use now, and I'm pretty sure is used in Brazil, is called pumped hydro storage. So this is often associated with hydroelectric dams, where excess electricity can be used to pump water back up to the upper reservoirs up high, and then the energy can be used at another time. However, a number of dedicated pumped hydro storage systems exist in places where water reservoirs can be located at high elevations, and that's not always possible everywhere. In other places, we can make smaller pumped hydro storage systems using caves or abandoned mines. There are lots of other possibilities for vehicle batteries, for stationary batteries that we have in our home, for something called compressed air energy storage, where you drill a hole into the rock in the ground, you pump air there under very high pressure using electricity, and then you can release that pressure through a turbine and make electricity when you need it. in much the same vein, one of my very good friends is beginning a new job here in Finland. He's also Brazilian from Belo Horizonte, and he will be trying to develop projects with something called liquefied air energy storage, where at times that there is a lot of excess electricity, you can take air and turn it into a liquid. And then again, you release that pressure that's built up by making the liquid, expand that air into a turbine that will then create electricity when you want it. And I think that there's lots of other possibilities for electricity storage out there. The research that is going on into electricity storage these days is considerable, and new things are entering, new possibilities are being found on a weekly basis.
How about like use the mechanical, for example, I just saw a research one day, I think it was a very long time ago. They want to just choose stick some kind of wood or something like a block into the Fifth Avenue in New York, and all because it's a very busy place and a lot of people go there and walk all the time. So they try to convert this mechanical energy to electrical energy. Is this still a thing?
Yeah, it's actually a very old thing. It's called piezoelectric cell. And basically it's a kind of crystal that when you compress it, the molecules within get closer together and it creates a voltage by the electrons getting closer together. And then when you release it, the crystal expands and the voltage changes yet again. And you can harness that. If you have an electric cigarette lighter, I'm sure that technology is being used, or those things that we click to light our barbecues or something. These all use piezo electric technologies, and you can build it on a much larger scale. You can make roadways that have this technology in it, sidewalks and so on. So it's a wonderful way of producing electricity rather passively, using the power of our everyday activities.
Yeah, but I think it's not that useful as like you were saying, this new research is coming, like electricity storage. But that was my question. If it's still being used, and it makes all the sense when you light a cigarette or you're gonna light a barbecue, it's the same thing. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and there's all other ways that we're kind of using electricity to produce mechanical potential energy that will then again become electricity. We can take large concrete blocks, and when we have excess electricity, lift them very high in the air. And then when we need electricity, we drop them down again. And we're using a turbine to do all of this. It's just being used in two directions. There's all sorts of things that are out there, and the race is on to find new forms of electricity storage. It's a very vibrant research area that is full of possibilities for the future.
Nice.
All right, so there we have it. We have a 100% renewable energy system. Several research studies that I've been involved with suggested the overall cost of such a system may even be less expensive than the current system. Other studies suggest that it'll be roughly the same cost, and still others suggest that the costs will not be significantly more than the current energy system. So I think that we can also look beyond the costs and think of all the other benefits that we get from this type of system. From a social perspective, this could mean a great deal of domestic job creation, because we won't need to, excuse me, we won't need to buy oil from a small number of countries that have oil and other energy resources. And this could create a more equal and just world that has a lot less political tension. You know, one of the preliminary activities that I sent got you to ask yourself a simple question. You know, what is the likelihood that nations will go to war over solar energy? And compare that answer to what is the likelihood that nations will go to war over oil? Well, I think we all know the answer. And that too has a cost, or represents a benefit that we can, if we want, even put a dollar value on. Right, a last key question must also be asked. Are there alternatives to a 100% renewable energy system? And certainly the answer is yes. There are plans out there to continue using fossil fuels, but with something called carbon capture and storage, where we take the carbon that is released from the burning of fossil fuels and store it somehow. In addition, the role of nuclear energy, I haven't discussed at all. Yet this is a very common topic when discussing energy systems. A full discussion of these technologies, I didn't even try to do today because I wanted to present 100% renewable energy systems, but certainly these other elements need to be discussed when we look at energy systems of the future. In my mind, 100% renewable, or aiming towards 100% renewable energy systems, represents a more sustainable choice globally for the future. And I think a growing body of research supports that conclusion. So I'd now like to conclude by acknowledging that this discussion, however complex it was, because we have a pretty messy picture compared to the one we started with, this discussion was not meant to be the whole story. There are more resources and technologies that currently represent minor opportunities in the energy system that have not been included here. And we must also acknowledge that there may be innovations and inventions that we cannot yet see, but may represent significant game changers in energy systems. The future is full of possibilities. And one of the most human of qualities is our ability to be adaptive and creative in the face of both change, and especially threatening change like climate change. My personal view is that 100% renewable energy systems can be a very important part of our strategy for the future. So I'd like to thank you very much for your attention and invite any questions that you might have.
Michael, I know like loads of renewable fuels and energy are already being used, but when do you think like the society is gonna use like 100% or at least like use more of renewable energy, like for everything?
I think that you know, if you're looking for a date as an answer, I think the date will be different in different parts of the world. I think countries like Brazil that have an abundance of natural resources have at least the opportunity to reach 100% renewable sooner than other countries. But there are other issues in countries like Brazil that are also very important. Getting energy services to everyone who needs them fairly and in an economical way is a big challenge. Shared by many countries. When you look at countries like Norway and others in Scandinavia, I think it can happen here much earlier. And they're already looking at 2035 to 2045 in different parts of their energy system of becoming 100% renewable. Europe will definitely get there or close to there faster than North America. So it's a complicated answer, but in theory, at least, my research is showing that, and not just mine, but others, is showing that it can be done by roughly 2050. And I think that this is consistent with the goal to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. I hope it happens within the next decade, but sometimes change in large systems, large technical systems like energy systems, happens rather slowly.
And another thing is like, do you think the only reason that people are not already using those renewable energy is like because of the economy or stuff? Because like solar, like you said, it's such like a huge amount of solar energy that we can use, and like we don't use like nothing almost. Why do you think like people are taking so long to see or to actually use those renewable energy, since like they have so much benefits?
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
it.
Professor, before you answer, Maria, which grade you are?
8th.
Eighth grade.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, that's an excellent question. And it has to do with something called technological lock-in. And when we see large energy systems or any kind of large technical system, we see that the technologies that are used at any given time last a long time. A coal power plant, for example, will operate for 40 years. A nuclear power plant, anywhere from 40 to 70 years. Other types of power plants in the range of 30 to 50 years as well. So the decisions that we make about energy today really will impact the choices that we have available to us 30, 50 years into the future. So the system that we have today is really dependent on decisions that were made decades ago. We get locked in to certain types of technology. And it's very difficult to unlock ourselves from those decisions that were made in the past. Economics is one aspect. Convenience is another. But at the same time, we as individuals have a lot of power. If we stop buying products that are made using certain types of energy, we force the system to change. Maybe not quickly, but more quickly than it naturally would. So I think we need to empower ourselves and become educated about all of the decisions we make about energy. One thing that we can do here in Finland is choose the type of energy that we buy. So in my house, I pay a little bit more money, and it's really only a little bit more, perhaps around 120 euros per year, so 10 euros per month, which isn't very much money. And I have a contract that guarantees that all of my electricity will come from renewable energy sources. Now, if everyone in the country were to do that, the only option for the system would be to produce, 100% renewable energy. But some people are very concerned about the cost of their energy bills, electricity bills or heating bills. And they make the only decision that's really possible for them, which is the lowest cost decision. And sometimes because of the technological lock-in, the other forms of energy production have an economic advantage over the newer, more sustainable ones. It's not a fair system, but anytime we have a competitive system, the old players of the game have an advantage over the new ones. They know how to play the game. And so that makes it difficult for any new player to come and be immediately successful. So yes, thank you for that question. It was very good.
And I think is a very political decision as well, right, Professor?
Yes.
Because, for example, in Brazil, we do have some electrical cars, but I mean, it's nothing if you compare with countries in Europe. Because the politicians here and all this kind of stuff, and even on the Middle East, because petroleum is a very huge thing there. Even though I don't know, I think petroleum is going to be over soon. That's why we have to think out of box. But I think it's a very political situation. Why people don't change their mind? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. You know, it is a very political situation, and you know, the big industries, traditional energy industries have a lot of influence in political decisions. And, you know, at one time I used to see some of these big businesses as somewhat evil, that they're trying to do something bad to us. But I've come to understand them a little bit better over the last few years. Because let's say, for example, you invest a great deal of money into growing a business of your own. Wouldn't you want to protect your investment?
Yeah.
Or if you borrowed money from your parents and aunts and uncles and so on, wouldn't you want to protect their investment? Because the investment horizon of energy technologies, again, is decades long. And it takes a long time to kind of get your money back. We don't want to destroy people's investments, but at the same time, we do need to make changes in the energy system. I believe that there's a fair way to do it so that we can protect those long-term investments that have already been made. But we kind of have to understand that that's part of the technological lock-in as well. There's it's only fair that they would want to save their businesses and save their investments. So I tend to take it easier on the big energy companies than I used to.
Yeah, that makes all the sense. Has anyone got any more question?
Yes,
I have.
like.
Okay, so we have two people. Assunta, you can go first, and then
I'd like to know about the metallurgical industries because they spend lots of energy, and
Yes.
we need lots of metal to make the batteries, for example. And it seems it seems a problem, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue, and it's another major area of interest for our research group, the Solar Economy Group at Lund University. We can have all of these grand ideas about what we think the energy system should look like, but are there material constraints? Are there metals that we need in batteries, as you mentioned, that come from unsustainable sources? Or is there enough, for example, lithium to make all of these batteries that I say we need? And these are issues that are currently being investigated very closely. Luckily, there are alternatives. Anytime we are thinking about metals, there are alternative metals. They may not be the least expensive ones, but there's always alternatives when we think we want to replace certain precious metals that are used in solar panels, or certain metals that are used in aspects of plastic that are used in batteries and so on. These sustainability issues are very important. I don't have all of the answers, but I agree completely that we can't just stop what we're doing and start doing something else that may be unsustainable. The other point you made is also very important as well, and this is something that's important in Finland. The mining industry is a very important aspect of economic life here as well, and they are major energy producers. If we need more of these essential elements to build the infrastructure that we need, then we're going to need more energy to do that. I believe that we can find a way to use sustainable energy to do this. But at the same time, these global mining industries are very competitive. We can add the steel industry in there as well. They're very competitive. And although there are options, other sustainable options available to these industries, no one wants to go first because ultimately it will affect the price of whatever metal or commodity they are selling. It'll make it more expensive. And in highly competitive global industries like the metal industry and the steel industry, that could be a big threat to an individual company that would be a first mover. It could also be an opportunity, though, as well, to market your product as being more sustainable than the others. Yes, you have to pay more, but here's what you get. And if we, as individual consumers, start to buy those products more than the others, then that will create some of the momentum that those industries need. I hope that answers your question.
All right, and there is someone else who wants to ask a question.
Can I?
Yes, definitely, Olivia. Go for it.
Besides the investment, why do you think people choose the fossil energy than the renewable energy?
Well, I think people don't always have the choice. The choice for fossil fuels is more natural, traditional, easy, cheaper in many cases. And again, this goes back to the technological lock-in that I was talking about before. To some extent, there are people who are resistant to any kind of change. We've done it this way for decades. Why should I change? There's a lot of misinformation out there about renewable energy that is, creating confusion in individuals. And when we are confused, we tend to stick to things that we know rather than taking chances with something new. And I think this is a normal reaction. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people, and this is what I admire most about, people of your generation, the younger generation, who are very knowledgeable, who are very motivated to make a change, because the choices that we are making about energy now, quite honestly, they're going to impact you and your children more than they're going to impact me. And so I'm really happy to see young people today very active in a wide range of environmental issues. Yeah, people will always be people, and we can't always make them do the right thing. But I think over time, we can try to convince people that it is in their best interest, their children's best interest, their grandchildren's best interest to make certain choices. And we should begin now because, quite honestly, the clock is ticking, and every minute that we wait is a lost minute in creating more sustainable energy systems for the future.
Right. Sorry, Maria, you can ask.
Oh, okay. I think the internet was bad. I was gonna ask something that you quite said now, that one thing that kind of bothered me is that now, like, we still have fuels and stuff, and sometimes I think that people are only gonna do like big changes of their country and stuff when the fuels are almost ending, and not like acting now while they still have it. Do you think the big changes and stuff people are gonna do when they having the fuels, or before that?
Well, I hope it's done before that. I hope we can convince people that their actions today are actually resulting in the death, premature death, and increased illness of people all over the world. You know, coming from Canada, a lot of my friends, you know, we have these great arguments about the use of energy. You know, in Canada, we have quite a lot of oil mixed with sand in certain parts of the country, and some of my friends believe that means jobs for me and my family, and food on our table, and things like that. But they don't see that the production and ultimate use of that oil will cause damage to people, including themselves. They just don't see it that way. And it's very hard to convince people of that, especially in an environment where there's a lot of contradictory and fake news out there. People stick with what they know when they get confused. I believe that we, as a global society, should take this situation a lot more seriously and act a lot more quickly and wisely. But mine is just one voice. I'm using it as loud as I can, and there are others as well. And in recent years, I think these issues have gotten a lot more attention, and I hope that when people your age start to vote and to make economic decisions for yourselves and your families, that you will act responsibly. And because I believe that those small actions will have a huge impact, and once things start to change, they will start to change very quickly.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think well said, Professor. And I think it's now the opportunity for them to have a look to study in LUT or La Parenta University. And I think, guys, if you are interested in this, to apply for this university, please let me know. I'm gonna just tap my email address and my phone number, so you can WhatsApp me, you can email me. And as I said at the beginning, Fiji is an educational agency, and we help students to apply for university, to apply for high schools. So don't miss this opportunity to apply for this amazing university in Finland and to study this sustainable energy with Professor Michael Child. So please, I'm gonna just tap here while Professor Michael Child talk a little bit more about the university. And please get in touch, guys. Let's be part of this program. And my way program, Mock Classes, is to help you guys to find your career, to find your way in a professional. You know, I was just talking to Maria Freire, and she said me, I really like this topic. So fantastic. That's why Fiji is here, to help you guys to find your way on your career, on your future. Okay, so Professor, if you want to talk a little bit about the La Parenta and LUT.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few quick words about this, and especially I think I can sort of speak to the Brazilian students as well by saying that LUT University has a great deal of both students and staff from Brazil. I think really the only big challenge that they have is knowing that when it's cold in the wintertime in Finland, it's summertime in Brazil. But I think that they've been very happy. My first day at LUT University, I had in my sort of peer tutor group, generally a small group of new students forms a group that has a senior student as their tutor. who teaches them about life at the university and in La Peranta as well. And one of the first people I met was a young woman from Brazil, and we remain very close friends to this date, many years later. And she and her husband are working still in Finland at a big international energy company. So they've done quite well for themselves. And there's many stories like that of people who decided to stay in Finland, or people who have taken their education and gone back to Brazil. We also have in the electrical engineering department a fairly new professor, Pedro Nardelli, who specializes in the Internet of Things. And he's doing really cutting edge, exciting work that we're all very proud of. And it brings new life to a very old subject of electrical engineering. So at this time, I would like to just show you a short video. It's 1.5 minutes long. Sorry, you'll see my face again, but it talks a little bit about one of the programs that I'm the head of, the Technology and Engineering Science program, where, well, and I think the video shows everything. So I will just show that. Who is this program for? Well, I think it's really for anyone who is interested in the engineering sciences. I think all you really need is to be curious and want to sort of respond to some of the great challenges both today and into the future. So the students in the Technology and Engineering Science program will receive a broad foundation of both knowledge and hands-on skills. They'll have the opportunity to then choose an area of specialty. It's electrical engineering, energy technology, mechanical engineering, and environmental technology. I think that students will also learn to manage complex projects, to work in part of multicultural teams, and develop the entrepreneurial skills that are needed. Throughout all of this, we aim to involve the many high-tech, clean-tech companies that are right here around us. And we're also offering opportunities to continue studies at the master's level. For too many students who leave university, there's this question afterwards: what am I going to do now? I see a different story playing out for our students. I see them at the end of their studies saying, guess what I'm going to do next?
That's fantastic. Lahti and La Parenta University is a great university in Finland, and they got a lot of opportunities, as Professor Michael was saying, for many Brazilians, even though the cold can be a little bit issue for us, but that's not a problem, because how much we're going to gain in the future after you guys get a degree in La Parenta or Lahti University, stay in Finland, stay in Europe, or come back to Brazil, or go anywhere. So those universities can open many doors for you guys. Professor,
Yes.
do you want to say anything else?
Yes, that's what we hope for. You said it very, very well. So again, if you require any further information about LUT University, you can certainly contact me. Please look at our web pages if you want more information. There's lots of information there, lots more videos to watch, and so on. But until it's time for you to make the decision on where to go to university, I wish you well, and of course fabulous success in your current studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. It was an amazing experience for us here. Even for me, I enjoy it a lot. Thank you very much for your participation on this mock class. Thank you. I just want to say something very, very quick. Guys, muito obrigado pela presença de todos. Eu adorei. É isso aí, vamos participar bastante. Abram o microfone, conversam com os professores. Esse mês, toda semana vai ter mock class, o que é uma ótima oportunidade para vocês aí participarem e ver aí ter as experiências nessas áreas de diferentes universidades. Semana que vem, não deixem de participar, convidem seus amigos da escola. A semana que vem vai ser semana de negócios, vamos ter um college dos Estados Unidos e uma universidade de Barcelona falando aí sobre negócios. Na semana seguinte, vamos ter uma faculdade de farmácia e medicina dos Estados Unidos, 45 coisas em 45 minutos da área da saúde. E na outra semana, vamos ter aí 4 mock class na área da saúde. Então, aí, pessoal que está interessado em fazer medicina, enfermagem, não fiquem fora dessa, tá bom? Fiquem atentos. E, como eu falei, vocês que estão interessados em aplicar para alguma universidade fora do país, para um high school, para um summer camp, entre em contato com a gente. Nós vamos ajudar vocês a montar esse plano de vida. Nós vamos ajudar vocês a abrir muitas portas para o seu futuro, tá bom? Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, professor.
Thank you. Obrigada.